Australians. I stand here before you as a representative of the Turrbal people, the original inhabitants of the North Pine area. My other Turrbal elders are unable to be here with us this morning, but they have asked me to convey their apologies as well as wishing you all well at this gathering. This is a very special occasion, special to the Turrbal people because it marks the first time that we have come face to face formally with the descendants of Tom Petrie, a man whose accounts and experience of living with my ancestors in the Brisbane area from the 1830s remain one of the most invaluable sources of information about life in the Moreton Bay penal colony. I trust that Mrs. Orr will shortly be giving you all a detailed account of her great-grandfather's life in the Moreton Bay area. Hence I will not be going over this aspect. One of the events that took place in Queensland history, of which little is known about in the broader community, was Queensland Legislative Assembly's report to the Select Committee of the Native Police Force, together with the proceeding of the committee and minutes of evidence in 1861. Tom Petrie actually appeared before this inquiry. He was about 30 years old. When questioned about the old Brisbane tribe, Mr. Petrie replied that he only knew of 5 people left out of the people that he grew up with. Some other observers at the time argued that the Turrbal people were extinct. One of those that survived was Kulkarawa, my great-great-grandmother. Tom Petrie, in fact, wrote about Kulkarawa in Tom Petrie's Reminiscence of Queensland. Granny Kitty, as we knew her, fled into the bushes with some of her relatives during a raid at Barambah, today known as Victoria Park, in the 1840s. This raid, which in my view was deliberately aimed at destabilising and undermining our pre-existing system, was sometimes undertaken by the native police and surveyors who were paving the way for the new settlement in Brisbane. Granny Kitty and others later found refuge at Kenilworth Station. I am a direct descendant of the few Turrbals that survived the adverse impact of European settlement in Brisbane from the 1820s onwards. Whilst the Turrbal experience was rather ugly, brutal and devastating, some humanitarians emerged around that time. They include people such as William Duncan and Isaac Moore. In spite of other harsh historical experience, the relatively few remaining Turrbals people bear no grudge. Rather, today we continue to practice our country and our customs and traditions proudly within our ancestral homeland. Let me conclude by thanking the organisers of this event and inviting us to partake in this important and historical occasion. By all accounts, Tom Petrie related well to my ancestors, and this is evident in the fact that my ancestors invited him to participate in some sacred ceremony. He respected and abided by our traditional laws and customs at the time of deep and widespread hostilities towards my ancestors in Brisbane. He sought the permission and approval of the life here before acquiring a piece of land in Barambah in 1859. Contrast Tom Petrie's approach to that of the then state of Queensland government, which, upon being proclaimed a separate state from the colony of New South Wales in 1859, began to sell various parcels of land in Brisbane, and by 1861 many of our places of cultural significance had been sold off around Spring Hill and elsewhere. We must remember that the permission and the consent of my ancestors were never sought in this whole process. In this regard, we, the Turrbal people, intend to honour Tom Petrie, William Duncan and Isaac Moore in due course for their contribution to humanity and race relations in the early days of Moreton Bay settlement and the early days of the state of Queensland. Thank you all for listening.